The curtains were never supposed to be open. I only looked up for a single second while carrying groceries into my apartment, but that one accidental glance changed everything I thought I knew about guilt, responsibility, and what it truly means to stand beside another human being. The woman who lived across the courtyard noticed me at the exact moment I realized what had happened. My face turned pale with embarrassment as I instantly looked away, wishing I could erase those few seconds from existence. I expected anger, shouting, or perhaps a complaint to the landlord. Instead, a few minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Standing there was my neighbor, her eyes filled not with rage but with exhaustion. She looked straight at me and quietly said, "Take responsibility." Those 3 words became the beginning of the most unexpected chapter of my life. If you believe that kindness, forgiveness, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Kind Heart Stories for more emotional stories that touch the heart. For several moments after she walked away, I couldn't even understand what she meant. I had done nothing intentionally. It had been an accident. Yet her words echoed through my mind all night. The next morning I finally gathered enough courage to knock on her door, ready to apologize once again. What I found inside shocked me. The apartment was almost empty. The furniture looked old and worn, unopened bills covered the kitchen table, and medicine bottles stood beside a half-finished glass of water. The confident woman I occasionally greeted in the hallway was now sitting quietly, looking far older than she ever had before. She explained that she had recently undergone surgery and could barely move without pain. Because of her condition, even simple tasks like hanging curtains properly or carrying groceries had become impossible. She admitted that when I accidentally saw her changing, she realized how vulnerable she had become. But her request had never been about the accident itself. She wanted someone to take responsibility for caring enough to help another person who had no one left. Her words settled heavily in my heart. I had spent years convincing myself that staying out of other people's lives was the safest way to live. I went to work, came home, closed my door, and repeated the same routine every day. My own past had taught me that getting close to people usually ended with disappointment. My parents had separated when I was young, friendships slowly disappeared, and relationships rarely lasted. Isolation felt easier than risking another heartbreak. Yet looking around her lonely apartment, I realized loneliness could be far more painful than rejection. I began with small things. I offered to buy groceries whenever I went shopping. I helped repair her curtain rod so it could close completely. I carried heavy laundry downstairs and picked up her prescriptions from the pharmacy. None of these tasks seemed extraordinary, but every visit slowly revealed pieces of her story. Her name was Emily. She had once been a successful school music teacher who filled classrooms with laughter and songs. Years earlier she had lost her husband to cancer, and her only son had moved overseas for work. Phone calls became less frequent until they almost disappeared altogether. Pride stopped her from asking neighbors for help, and little by little her world became smaller than the walls surrounding her apartment. Weeks passed, and something unexpected happened. Helping Emily was changing me far more than it was changing her. My apartment no longer felt like a lonely place to hide. Instead of rushing home after work, I found myself wondering whether she needed anything from the grocery store or simply someone to sit with during dinner. We shared quiet evenings drinking tea while she told stories about former students who still wrote letters thanking her for believing in them. Sometimes she smiled while remembering happier days. Other times tears quietly rolled down her face, and all I could do was sit beside her in silence. I learned that not every wound could be fixed with words. Some hearts only needed another heartbeat nearby. Just when life finally seemed to be improving, another challenge arrived. One rainy evening Emily collapsed while walking toward her mailbox. Thankfully another resident saw her fall and called an ambulance. I rushed to the hospital after receiving the news from the building manager. The doctors explained that her recovery had become more complicated than expected. She would need several months of rehabilitation, regular medical appointments, and constant assistance once she returned home. Her insurance covered only part of the treatment, leaving overwhelming expenses she had no hope of paying. That night I barely slept. I kept hearing her words from weeks before, "Take responsibility." I finally understood that responsibility is not about blame. It is about choosing not to walk away when someone desperately needs compassion. The following morning I spoke with our apartment neighbors. Many admitted they barely knew Emily despite living only a few steps away for years. Together we organized a community fundraiser. Some donated money. Others prepared meals. A retired carpenter repaired broken furniture inside her apartment. Teenagers volunteered to clean her home every weekend. What began as one person's accidental mistake slowly transformed into an entire community rediscovering what it meant to care for one another. When Emily returned home after rehabilitation, she cried as she saw fresh flowers on her table, clean windows filling the apartment with sunlight, and handwritten cards from neighbors she had never spoken to before. For the first time in years, laughter echoed through her home again. Children from the building even visited after school to hear her play old songs on a dusty piano that had remained silent for far too long. Watching those moments reminded me that kindness spreads quietly, almost like sunlight entering a room through a window left slightly open. Months later another surprise arrived. Emily's son unexpectedly returned from overseas after learning about everything through one of the neighbors' social media posts. Shame filled his face as he realized how much time he had allowed to pass. Their reunion was filled with tears, apologies, long embraces, and promises to never let distance replace love again. Standing quietly in the hallway, I realized I had witnessed something far greater than coincidence. One accidental glance had started a chain of events that reunited a broken family and restored hope where loneliness had nearly won. Emily eventually regained enough strength to walk without assistance. She often sat on the apartment bench greeting everyone who passed by, no longer hiding behind closed doors. As for me, I discovered that responsibility isn't always about fixing a mistake. Sometimes life places us in unexpected situations simply because we are the right person to notice another person's silent suffering. We cannot control every accident, but we can always choose what kind of person we become afterward. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends and family, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Kind Heart Stories. Your support allows more people to discover stories that inspire kindness, hope, and compassion. Before this story ends, please write in the comments, "Kindness is everyone's responsibility." Your words may encourage someone who is silently struggling today. As I looked across the courtyard one peaceful evening, the same window where everything had begun was now covered with neatly hung curtains. But this time I wasn't looking because of curiosity. I was smiling because I knew that behind those curtains lived someone who was no longer alone. Life has a strange way of turning embarrassing accidents into beautiful blessings when compassion guides our choices. That unexpected moment taught me a lesson I will carry forever. Responsibility is not about the mistakes we make by accident, it is about the love we choose to give afterward. Sometimes the greatest miracle is simply refusing to walk away from someone who believes the world has already forgotten them. And perhaps that is exactly how ordinary people become the reason another heart learns to hope again.